I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay, can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Yep, I do.
Awesome. All right. So here's your first big difference. So when you log into Virtual Hold now, you're not logging into the IQ system anymore. You're actually logging into our Launchpad. So with our Launchpad, you'll see here, we actually have 5 different areas of the software that you can now access. Now, that depends on your access level that you were given when you had your ID for IQ. So in case you weren't aware, there was 4 login levels, basically the observer, who only got to run real-time reports, reporter was only able to run real-time and historical reports, manager level was able to run reports and change settings or variables in the system, and then administrator was able to do everything. Now, the only way that you will see all 5 of these links or boxes is if you have the administrator access level. If you have anything below that, observer, reporter, manager, then the only 2 that you would see would be this dashboards, which is our new real-time reporting, as well as other configuration, which is the IQ system. You would not see these other blocks, config management, system management, and licensing. So what we will cover today is dashboards. And we'll talk a little bit about other configuration, but there's really not much to talk about in here. Again, when we get in here, you'll notice or recognize that this is the old IQ system. When you logged into Virtual Hold, this is what you came to. This has not changed. There really is there's no new settings. The only new thing that you may see or you may witness is, depending on what your access level is or what you're actually tasked with doing, as far as historical reports, which are located under our QInfo location or table, is the new real-time report, historical reports that we do have called license reports. So these license reports are replacing the port utilization report that we had, which is a real-time report called line status. The line status report was basically showing you how many ports were in use, which actually equates to licenses. So, Comcast has purchased so many licenses. So that line status report would basically just show how many ports are being utilized at any one given time. Well, in the new version, we have a new feature, basically just called licensing, where the port utilization now, you're able to actually view both real-time and historically. So these are the 3 new historical reports that we have, all based on licensing, which is just showing you, like it says, license peak utilization, license requests, which is basically just how many calls come in that Virtual Hold greeted and announced wait time and offered the callback option. As far as everything else in IQ, nothing else has changed. So everything else in here as far as settings and these real-time reports, or other than these 3 new historical reports, nothing else has changed. So again, getting back to our Launchpad, which again is new, the other big change is the real-time reporting. So here located in dashboards. So when I access dashboards, I'm going to come to my real-time queues view, which is basically the same as what you would have viewed in the Q statistics report over in QWatch in IQ. The data that we pull for these reports is the same that you would see in the other reports, the other real-time reports under Q statistics. So the data is the same, but obviously, as you see, it's a different look. When you come into dashboards, you are coming into a default view. So this default view is all of these queues, and I'm logged in or in my lab server, but all of these queues are set up like a deck of cards. So it's just like cards set up on a table, or just a couple cards, 5 cards in each row. So I have 14 queues here. This is basically just what we call the card view. Well, we also have a different view where if you are used to the queue statistics report, which basically just listed out the queues row by row, you can still view this report that same way. So if I go up to my menu bar here, and I have a couple blocks over here to the right, one is highlighted, that's the card view. Well, I also have a list view. So if I click on this guy, you'll now see that the report looks somewhat similar to how the queue statistics report was set up, where it's just row by row of each of my queues and these certain metrics listed over here to the right side. Now, I usually like to view the cards simply because there's one metric in here that really isn't tracked or kept in the list view. And that metric is actually, if you look at the card here in this big open white space here under the queue name, this is actually a 2-hour rolling history of EWT for each of your queues. So you see in the big bold numbers and letters, you got the big number EWT here, but right above that, where it says now to 2 hours ago, it would display the estimated wait time. But it would be a line graph. So if you have calls going in to these queues, this might look like a mountain range. It's just going to be your peaks and valleys of EWT for the past 2 hours that shows up in this graph area. So that's something new that we've added to our dashboard, to our real-time reporting here for the queues. You don't get that line graph if you run this report in the line mode. So that's why I like to look at the cards themselves, because I would get that. I don't have any calls going through my system right now, but I would get this little, again, it'll be just like a mountain range. Okay, so in each of my cards, I have certain metrics. So these metrics are the same that I would have seen in the queue statistics report over in QWatch, but we've shortened up some of the names. So for example, ASAP, I think in queue statistics report it's called ASAP callback. Holding was called holding queue. Priority was called priority queue. So we shortened up some of the names for these metrics. It's the same data. If you were live in the system and both systems were up and running, your old version 7 and this new version, and you looked at this report and looked at your queue statistics report, those numbers would be the same. We're pulling information from the same source, just a different way to display it here. So I have a couple different metrics here, but these are not all the metrics that I have available to me. I have other metrics that I could add. So if I go back up to my menu bar where I see my 3 blocks here, basically 3 links, show all queues, configure stats, and save perspective. If I look at this or click on this configure stats metric, I got a bunch of other metrics in here. Now the ones that are checked are the ones that are showing up in my card. There's a couple other in here that you probably should add, because I think it's important that you keep track of these metrics that are not by default part of the card. The first one is the first thing that a caller will experience when they call into a queue that VirtualHold's monitoring is this guy right here, the inbound IVR. So that's something I think you should check and have in your report, because that could be a potential call that goes to your queue. So inbound IVR is one of those. And another one is if someone requests a callback and then we call them back, but we miss them for some reason, maybe the phone's busy or they just don't answer the phone, we get an answer machine. Well, you can actually have VirtualHold retry that customer. Call them back another time, a second time, a third time. You decide, you customize how many retries we have. Well, there's a parameter for that. So it's right here where it says retry. So I'm going to add that one. Notice whenever I click on it, it adds it to my card right away. And that should be about the metrics. We should be good there. So now, the other thing that you can do, which you were not able to do over in the queue statistics report, is you can actually sort these guys. You can sort these metrics in any order you would like, simply by dragging and dropping them. So for example, let's say operation mode, I'll have that guy first, but then the first thing the caller experiences is the inbound IVR. So let me left click on this guy and drag him up to here. Now he doesn't have to be second in line. I don't have to worry about making sure he goes between operation mode and mode status, because mode status is not a metric that shows up in my card. So automatically it's the only ones that are checked. So first is op mode and then inbound IVR. In the inbound IVR, they might decide to hold, so let me pick this guy and put him here. Too far. And then may decide to take a callback, so let me put ASAP right here. And then what else? You have your, if we call the customer back and they answer and they press 1, then that they get shipped to the priority queue. So you get the idea that I can drag and drop these metrics and put them in any order I'd like. I can put them in alphabetical order if I wanted to. So it's just simply by left-clicking, dragging, and dropping them. Now, if I'm done sorting and I'm done picking my metrics, I just left-click anywhere else, or I can just click on the drop-down menu and it'll go away. So now what I've done is I've customized my queues a little bit. I've added metrics that I want to see, and I've sorted them, so it makes a little bit more sense to me. Now, another new feature that you could not do in the queue statistics report, so the old real-time reporting. You may have someone in the contact center that you have 14 queues here. Now I know Comcast has quite a few more, but let's say I have 14 queues, but I have a team lead who's only responsible for, let's say, this collections queue and maybe the retention queue and I don't know, maybe the support queue. So they're responsible for those 3. Well, you can see that there's 1 card in each row. So 14 queues, they just have to siphon through those 14 and find their 3, which isn't such a big deal. But if you think about it, if Comcast has well over 100 queues and you have someone that's only responsible for 4 or 5 of those, they could be scrolling forever. So there's a way that you can actually hide these other queues. If you look next to the queue names, there's this star. It looks like it's grayed out right now. Once I go ahead and check that star, it becomes highlighted. So I can go through and star maybe the 3 queues that I'm responsible for. Now I go back up to my menu bar and I see this guy that says show all queues or only show starred queues. Watch what happens when I check this guy. Those other queues went away. And now I just have my 3 queues that I am responsible for. So I don't have to go through and scroll through 100 different queues just to find my 3. So that's another customization. That's another new feature that we have in version 8. Now, the very next thing that you should do is actually save this guy. So you've customized it. So I've added my metrics. I've sorted them. I've picked my queues and hid the other ones. Now I need to save it. We do that as a perspective. We call it a perspective. But watch when I click on this guy, you'll see a little box pops up and says you can save it as a bookmark. And to do that, all I have to do is drag this button to your bookmark. So this green square here, I left click and I drop them. Now you see it doesn't rename it yet. So drag this button, all I have to do is right click on it and I'll say edit, and I can edit the name. Maybe I'll just call it Dale's Queues, and I'll click on save. Now I have a bookmark. The reason that it's important to save these, let me show you why. Let's say I'm back at Launchpad. So let's say I just walked through that configuration, right? That customization that I just did. Sorting my metrics, picking them, saving my queue, or I'm sorry, picking my queues that I want to save and only show. And then someone comes up to me and asks a question, said, I need you to get me this information. So before you do anything else, you need to go over and get this information. All right, so let me go over, maybe I'm looking up at turn on threshold. So I come over to other configuration, ASAP, callback, I look at settings, and then I go into settings, retry parameters, and so on. So I get them their turn on threshold for the queue, and they walk away. Now I say, okay, good. Now they're gone. Let me go back to dashboards and save all that customization I did. So I go back to Launchpad, I click on dashboards, and let me just save this. Oh, where did it go? One very important thing to remember is that anytime you access dashboards from the link, you come into a default view. The default view is all queues set up in cards with only certain metrics, not all the metrics, but only certain default metrics, and they are unsorted. So that's important to remember, because if I walk through all that customization and I don't save it and then I go somewhere else, I lose it and I have to start from scratch. I could be over here. I try to access dashboards and my queues that I just customized, and they'll be gone. Now, the great thing is, because it's a bookmark, I could be anywhere in Virtual Hold. It's a bookmark. I just have to click on it. Now, you can save as many bookmarks as you would like, as many as your internet browser would allow you. I can save 10 different bookmarks if I wanted to. Maybe I'm a supervisor and I have 10 different team leads that I want to keep track of with their queues. I can save 10 different bookmarks for each one of their setups, each one of their queues. Now, remember that, or keep in mind that you are saving this with your ID. So you logged in with your ID, and whatever you customize is based on your ID. No one else would see it. So it wouldn't be shared across the organization or anything. So it's set to your login ID. But again, you can save as many bookmarks as you would like. All right, so let me pause there before I go on. Is there any questions about your queues dashboard? This is basically replacing the queue statistics report, configuring these, customizing, sorting, saving. Any questions so far?
No, I'm good.
No, I think we're good here too.
Good. Yeah, it's pretty user friendly. I mean, this is not rocket science, right? It's pretty self-explanatory up here. We're showing all the queues, or showing just the starred queues. So if I uncheck this, here come back all my queues, right? So this is not rocket science that you have to study and try and remember. We're trying to make this as user friendly as possible. So that's your queues dashboards. Well, there's other reports in here. Now, with Comcast, I will say that this one report that you see up here, if you see my sub-menu here, I got queues, which I'm looking at my queues dashboard. Then we got a line status in the global snapshot. This line status report is not applicable in your environment. So you would not need to click on this, because if you do, the report will be blank. Your screen would be blank, basically. Now I can do it. I'm in a lab, and it's set up differently than your environment, so it does show something. But just remember that you will not see this. This would be all gone. So you'd basically say, it would say line status, and then it would be white space underneath it. That's because in the new version, we have the new licensing, which we're not going to talk about in this class. That's a different class. But again, the licensing, like I showed in those historic reports, is where we basically do the port utilization, which is what line status used to do for us. So you don't need to click on line status. Now, from my queues dashboard, I can do a couple different things now. If you notice, when I put my cursor over one of my queues, it becomes a clickable link. So basically, this is a link. A card is a link. If I left click on it, it takes me to a new screen. Now, this new screen is basically drilling down into the collections queue. And now what it's showing me is, if you see this big open area up at the top here of EWT, but now it's showing me now to 6 hours ago. So it's a 6-hour rolling history of EWT. And then down below, we have 2-hour rolling histories of all these other metrics. How many callbacks, how many customers are in the priority queue or at the front of the queue, how many customers decided to hold, how many are in the inbound IVR. So it's a 2-hour rolling history. Again, it's just a line graph. It's going to be a line graph with peaks and valleys, you know, like it's going to look like a mountain range. Well, maybe I want to see the past 6 hours of how many callbacks were requested. So all I have to do in my ASAP callback block, you see again, anywhere in here, it becomes a clickable link. I left click, and now look what happens up here. Now it's not EWT anymore, it says ASAP. So then it would show for the last 6 hours how many callbacks were requested in this big open area up here. Okay, now if you notice next where it says collection, so I'm looking at the collections queue, the operation mode is normal right now, but then there's a button here that says queue snapshot. If you remember from, if you ever had to run it, if you remember from our real-time reports in IQ, there was a queue snapshot report. It was called the virtual queue snapshot. Well, we still have that, and it's right here. So if I click on this, it's going to be blank again because I don't have any calls going through. But now it's a snapshot for this collections queue, which is basically just saying, okay, how many callbacks are pending for this queue currently? And this is real time. Remember, all these dashboard reports are real time. So it's going to show me my phone number, the approximate callback time, not my phone number, the phone number that's the callback's pending for, the callback time, call type. There's only 2 of them. There's either the ASAP callback or schedule callback. So it might say appointment. Queue, which under this column is just going to say collections. And then call ID, which is the unique call identifier. So again, basically the same information that we would see in the old real-time report for virtual queue snapshot. You can see here. Now, this is a snapshot for the collections queue. I can also see a snapshot for all queues if I wanted to. So there's actually 2 ways to do that. Right now, I'm just looking at collections, but what if I want to look at all the queues? I can do one of 2 things. You see right up here in my submenu, I have global snapshot. So I could certainly click on that. It'll bring me to the snapshot for the global set of queues. Or right next to where it says snapshot for all queues, I'm sorry, snapshot for collections, I click on the back arrow, and now it's going to say snapshot for all queues. So make sure you understand that you can run a snapshot for each queue or all of them. And then it's just going to list out row by row again any pending callback for any of the queues, which then makes this column much more meaningful because this is going to tell you which queue those callbacks are pending in. So that's your snapshot report. So the the 4 reports that were available in QWatch, so that in the old version, you had your queue statistics, which is this guy. You had line status, which we have, but you're not going to need to run that anymore. We had a virtual queue forecast report, and if you ever ran that report, you know it was the report that it basically broke down the next 4 hours, broken out by interval, how many callbacks were pending. And it only gave you a quantity. It didn't tell you, which ones were pending or anything like that. It was just basically showing you the next 4 hours, broken down by 15-minute intervals, how many callbacks were pending. That report has not been ported over to this dashboards section yet. So that report, and to be honest, I don't know if they're going to do that. I'm not sure what's on the roadmap for updating these real-time reports. But that report wasn't run all that often anyway. At least that's the feedback we've been receiving from clients. But it was a good report, maybe around lunchtime or around the end of the day, see how many callbacks are pending, in case I got close to the end of the day when agents are going to start going home and so on. But that report has not been ported over. But then the 4th report that was available was the virtual queue snapshot report, which again, we just talked about. You can either do a queue snapshot or a global snapshot. One last thing about the snapshot report. If you remember, if you ever had to run this report over in over in the QWatch reports, in the QSnapshot report, you had the capability of canceling callbacks. That functionality has not been ported over here yet as well. We are not able to excuse me, we're not able to cancel callbacks in the new system yet, in the dashboards yet. It is on our roadmap. The functionality will be placed in here. I just don't know when. I have a feeling where they're going to put it is in this phone lookup area. So this phone lookup, if I click on it, it's going to ask you to type in a phone number. So if you type in a phone number, it's going to bring up any information about that callback that is pending. And that information is basically the same information you see on your screen right here. The phone number, the approximate callback time, what type of call it was, and the queue. So I believe what they're going to do is this box would expand. If you put a number in here that actually had a callback in here, it would be a big box up here. So this, I believe, is where they're going to put the functionality to cancel callbacks. Type in a phone number, you get the here. Oh, go ahead.
Is there a date on that function that's going to be on the dashboard?
What do you mean? Do I know when it's coming?
Yeah.
That I don't know. I'd have to check with our product management team. I know it's on our roadmap. I just don't know where it's at on the roadmap.
Okay.
They are, just to let you know, we are going through a process. There's actually a project team that is going to be revamping IQ. So again, this is the IQ system. They're going to be revamping this UI. I have not seen the mock-up yet. I don't know what it looks like, but dashboards that we were just in, that's the start of it. So putting the real-time reports into dashboards is the beginning of the, I'll call it the beginning of the end of IQ. This is really going through a big overhaul. I don't know how soon that would be coming. I'm hopeful it's this year, but they're going to be redoing the historical report section, how we view and change settings, how this whole system looks. Because I don't know, I guess for us, it does look a little antiquated, at least from what we look at right now. You may not think that, but I think some of our software developers think that it can be better, and I think it can too. I mean, and we really started already with dashboards. I think it's a healthier look. It's more user-friendly. You know, there's things in here that you can do that you couldn't do in the old reporting. So this is our start of revamping the UI. But for dashboards, that's really it. Again, here's another button down here that you're not going to need to click on because line status not applicable in your environment. But that's about it for dashboards. That's all the reports in dashboards. So again, the big changes, Launchpad, which is where you begin now, and depending on your access level, you may only see two. You may only see dashboards and other configuration. Config management, licensing, and system management are reserved for the administrators of the software. So any questions about dashboards at all, about anything in here?
No, I think it's pretty straightforward as far as I can see.
Yeah, I agree.
It would have been nice if we could see some data that was available.
Yeah, I unfortunately don't have any calls going through my system. I have historical data, but I don't have any real-time data.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you guys are live yet. I don't know if you've upgraded yet. I've not heard the final word yet of when you're actually upgrading. But again, yeah, it's the same information that you would see in the Q statistics report. Again, but the big difference is going to be this big section here where the line graph is going to show you. And again, it's just going to look like a mountain range with your peaks and valleys of EWT.
Okay. And you said that's over a 2-hour period, right?
Yep.
for the last 2 hours.
Exactly.
Okay.
So your big bold numbers and letters are the current, what we're actually calculating right now. And then in this graph would be from now to 2 hours ago. So yeah, you get that rolling history.
Right.
And again, if you want to see if you wanted to see what the past 6 hours was for some reason, you just click on this. It takes me to this new screen where now it's more graphical representations of each of these metrics. And now I have a 6-hour rolling history window up here. And you kind of see it, it says now, although it's kind of faint, but now to 6 hours ago. And that's, again, just going to be a huge mountain range for, especially your busy queues, where the estimated wait time could, fluctuate quite significantly. But those are your dashboard reports. And really, that's it. That's the changes that from going from your version 7 to version 8. It's Launchpad and dashboards. So any questions about any of that?
No, I don't have any.
Nope.
Okay. Well, yeah, I guess it really didn't take the full hour, but just in case there were a lot of questions, we always want to buffer the time a little bit. But that's it. That's all the change there is right now for going to version 8.
Okay.
All right.
Well, Dale, I appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. And that's it. There's no other questions, and I hope you guys have a great rest of the day.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Thanks.